Welcome. I'm Twyla Meyer. I'm a co-chair of OneHamtramck, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to an event by Alisa Perkins has prepared this event for OneHamtramck. There's snacks in the back of the room, so help yourself throughout the program. And to tell you a little bit more, here's Bill Meyer.
Thank you. Twyla and I are co-chairs of OneHamtramck. The group's been around for about 12 years now. And we want to welcome you here to this forum that we put on forums and many public events, but the ones we're most famous for are the two murals that we sponsored, the Yemen mural, which is on the side of the Sheba restaurant, and the Bangladesh mural, which is on Convener up on the Bridge Academy West on the east side of the wall. Two giant, beautiful murals that represent the ethnic communities. So before we start, I want to put out some thanks, first of all, to Yazan, Dr. Yazan, who allowed us to use this space for this event. We thank him very much. And as you can tell, they're in the method of construction right now. They're building some couches and chairs and all sorts of stuff. It's going to be very elaborate. Next time you come here, you'll see a totally different room. But we all fit in here, so we thank you for coming. I'd also like to thank Twyla for bringing some of the food that she put together, and also to Al-Haramain, who donated the grapes and the dates. And they're very good, so I hope you eat them all up before we all go home today. Should let you know that we're trying to save the Arab mural right now, the Yemen mural. It's in the process of possibly being covered up by construction in front of the building. So we're at a stage now where we're trying to save that mural. So keep your eyes open. We might need your help later protecting and saving that cultural icon. There's a sign-in sheet if you'd like to be on our mailing list for OneHamtramck. We'd love to have you know about what we're doing. And we understand there will be a Q&A after the discussion, so I hope you all stick around and contribute to the communications and conversation. It's always more lively and fun when everybody participates. So we're very excited to introduce you to the, I guess she's the convener, the host of this event. A dear friend for many years. She helped us actually start OneHamtramck years ago, helping us write the mission statement. And she is now a consultant with OneHamtramck, living in Kalamazoo. And she actually lived here for a long time too. She's the author of a new book that's going to come out next year. It's called Muslim American City, which will have a lot of us in it, so that'll be very interesting. It's published by the New York University Press, so look for that. Alisa Perkins is a anthropologist. She has a PhD in anthropology, urban anthropology, and she did all the work to put this together, to get the panelists and make sure that we have people here to enjoy this conversation. She worked very tirelessly from Kalamazoo and from all over the place, and she's been in the city many times. So to make sure that this happens. And we appreciate the work that she does, and she's going to convene this and now host this and introduce you to our special guests who came tonight. And OneHamtramck also thanks the guests who are joining us tonight. So let's please welcome Alisa Perkins.
Thank you, Bill, for that beautiful introduction. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to have served as consultant for OneHamtramck since the beginning. So as Bill mentioned, I'm Alisa Perkins, and I'm at Western Michigan University, which is in Kalamazoo, about 2.5 hours from here. But it seems a lot longer in the winter. And as Bill mentioned, I'm an anthropologist who's been carrying out research on Muslim American civic engagement in Hamtramck since 2007. And I've lived here a couple years, and then I've been going back and forth ever since. And you can't come enough, because every time I come, it's like huge changes have happened. Hamtramck is a rapidly changing city, and a lot of wonderful new developments are taking place. I want to, again, welcome everyone who's joined our Education and Inclusion Forum. Welcoming especially to any students and parents who are here, who are the most important people who may have come, because they're the ones at the heart of the issues that we're going to discuss. And also all community members, Hamtramck residents, those from Detroit, Dearborn, and other places, educators, community leaders, social justice workers, business people, and everyone who's come here to be part of our conversation. The idea for the Education and Inclusion Forum was inspired by the amazing changes that are taking place in Hamtramck schools. The school's leadership, students, and families have dealt so beautifully with the challenges of language difference, cultural difference, and religious difference. Hamtramck is truly a model for the rest of the nation and even internationally. So this panel is an effort for all of us to learn from one another about what inclusion can look like in different educational institutions. It's centered in Hamtramck, but the panel also deliberately includes leaders and experts from Detroit and Dearborn. Each city has its own challenges and has developed its own solutions. Each city has a lot to learn from each other's histories, successes, and ways of doing things when it comes to education and inclusion. And one of our leaders is in an institution that's right on the border between Hamtramck and Detroit, so he will tell us even more about these merging. So today we are going to look at this issue of education and inclusion in broad terms. Each of our speakers is a leader in education advocacy. Each one will tell their own story about how they have struggled to widen the boundaries of inclusion and belonging. Each panelist, we have 6 panelists, and we have 1 keynote speaker and 5 panelists. And each of our speakers will speak for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to discussion, not just Q&A, but discussion, because everyone is strongly encouraged to share their insights as well as any questions or comments. And we are honored to have these 6 experts with us today. Each has been remarkably successful in leadership and innovation. I'm going to first just tell you who we have here, and then they'll be called up one by one. So our keynote speaker is Mika'il Saadiq from Al-Iklhas Training Academy. Our panelists include Barbara Jones from the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at Wayne State University. We have Jaleelah Ahmed, Superintendent of Hamtramck Public Schools. Raihan Akther, the principal at Bridge Academy. Adeeb Mozip from Wayne State University and the American Association for Yemeni Students and Professionals. And Emad Shammakh, who is now the president of the Yemen American Leadership Association. And before I turn it over to our keynote speaker, I'd like to thank Bill Meyer, OneHamtramck founder, and OneHamtramck co-founder Twyla Meyer for all their work to organize the event. I'd also like to thank Dr. Yazan for his generosity in allowing us to use this beautiful facility today. I'd also like to take a moment for our teacher, Emily Finnan. If you can come up and say a few words before I turn it over to the keynote speaker. Emily Finnan worked with students to create art to reflect this event that I'd like her to talk a bit about.
Thank you, everyone. I teach at Bushiso Middle School this year, but for the past 5 years I've been at Dickinson East Elementary. I absolutely love this community and I love teaching art here. So when I had this opportunity to have my students create artwork, I knew that if they created a puzzle piece, I could pose the question of how can you portray your individuality, but also show how you fit into our community. And we brainstormed together. Some students depicted their past, what led them to Hamtramck. Some depicted their visions for the future, what they want to do when they get older. Some included positive quotes, their mottos that they live by. Others included their day-to-day activities, their hobbies, video games, sports, movies. Each one is unique. Each one is special and eye-catching. And I invite you to take a moment and really, really look at how these students conveyed their lives and all the effort and artistic creativity that they put into their puzzle piece. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. And she also created a beautiful flyer to advertise our event. I'm now going to introduce our keynote speaker, Mika'il Saadiq, the Assistant Director at Al-Iklhas Training Academy. Mr. Saadiq has had many years of leadership and involvement with different aspects of education and social justice. Most particularly, he has played a strong leadership role at Al-Iklhas Academy, a parochial Islamic school on the border of Hamtramck and Detroit. Mr. Saadiq, please turn it over.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. And good evening, everyone. Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And assalamu alaikum. Happy hump day. And all of those things. Well, as Dr. Perkins said, I can introduce myself again, just for familiarity. My name is Mika'il Stewart Saadiq, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor to be with you, opening up our distinguished panel. I want to thank One Detroit once again. I want to thank all of our guests, our panelists, our educators, our community people. It is my honor to be with you once again. I pray sincerely that God Almighty blesses you and continue you to be successful in whatever you endeavor. Amen. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we have to put things in a historic context, as most of you know. When the first English colony was established in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, the struggle for inclusion began. This year marks 400 years since the first enslaved Africans arrived on the shores of North America. And there's actually a famous podcast, 1619, that Nicole Hannah-Jones comments on this, and she broadcasts. But consequently, with that, even the struggle for inclusion was intensified with classism and what we know our nation was built on, the old, ugly racism and or white supremacy. From the Indian Removal Act of 1830 to the Reorganizational Act of 1934. From Brown versus the Board of Education to Equal Education Opportunity Act of 1974, our country's struggle for inclusive education continues. And even nowadays. So bringing it right home, centered in Michigan. How many of you knew that there were several anti-Sharia or Islamophobic bills that were introduced into the Michigan legislature over the last 3 years? I'm sure most of you knew that. But what you probably didn't know is that there was an effort to erase from history, to erase the identity of many minority populations through rewriting and amending the Board of Education standards. Specifically, there was a man named Patrick Colbeck, and some of you might have met him before. Patrick Colbeck was a gubernatorial candidate in the last Michigan state election. He ran against Governor Whitmer, of course. Well, he ran in the primaries, but he wasn't successful either way. Patrick Colbeck introduced several Islamophobic ideas into the standards. One of them, not just Islamophobic, but even some of them to erase minority populations. One thing that Patrick Colbeck suggested is that we stop talking about other religions, or religions other than Christianity, to mention less about religions other than Christianity. Another thing he mentioned was to not involve any insinuating of the civil rights of gays. And of course, the Islamophobic notes were to not include educating our children about the historical contribution of the Islamic civilization. Well, Patrick Colbeck was unsuccessful, but he and his cohorts, they tried for several years introducing these things on the floor. The media pushed it. They even had a national coalition of legislators that thought just like them. And they were trying to bully us out of the fabric of American life. Well, I thank God that they were unsuccessful. In June of this year, the standards were passed, and much to their mire and their defeat, inclusion won, diversity won. Why do I mention this once again, ladies and gentlemen? Because as Dr. Perkins informed you all, I've been a member of a very diverse and beautiful community for more than 20 years now. This year marks my 20th year as an educator at the historic Al-Iklhas Training Academy. I thank God for those opportunities, but I also thank God for the people that helped to mold me into a better educator. The school that I teach at is in a very high-profile, diverse area called Banglatown now. Now, you know, when we first came around there were these romantic or sexy names like Banglatown. You know, no one called it Banglatown. It was just like, actually, a lot of people still consider it Hamtramck. But I argue with people, no, it's Detroit, because I'm a Detroiter at heart. You're going to stop taking things away from Detroit. So when people found out that this very eclectic, this beautiful, walkable neighborhood, where you had bodega-style markets, you could walk and get a mango. You could walk over here and eat, a tandoori pizza. Or you could get a halal burger. You can get vegan. You can get whatever you wanted. When people found out this was over there, everyone wanted to claim it. So now we have the name Banglatown. And because of the diversity, because of the people, your neighbors, you all, your colleagues, never giving up on these areas, now the resources are coming. Home ownership is rising. Vacant homes and abandoned homes are being knocked down. And why do we mention that once again? Because in our state, it is a very flawed system of raising funds for education, but going back to the beginning of the colonizers. Inclusion is a struggle around land. It is, when we talk about education, the funding of education in our state evolves around property taxes. So, ladies and gentlemen, throughout our panel, throughout our travels and our struggles in inclusive education, let us remember the importance of people and people's right to land. Let us remember that many of our ancestors, whether your ancestors came here willingly or unwillingly, many of our ancestors made America great. And you all, with your skills, your training, your commitment to diversity, your commitment to one another, will continue to make America great, and you don't even need a red baseball cap to do it. So I would like to quote some things. I'm also an imam, if I have time. I'm also an imam, a Muslim pastor. Most of you know what that is because you're a part of a diverse community. So I would be remiss if I didn't quote the Quran, but it's relevant. From the 49th chapter of the Holy Quran, verse 13. It is translated that God says, O mankind, we have created you from male and female, and made you peoples and tribes, that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you. Indeed, God is all-knowing, all-acquainted. So we're reminded in our faith that God Almighty, the Creator, the Spirit, the power, the ever-living, whatever name or whatever faith or non-faith that you recognize, how we come to be, we're very different and diverse. And we want to embrace that. We want to use this as a tool of education. And if we're diverse in our planning, in our intentions, in the structure of our faculties, if we're diverse, then therefore we'll be able to teach the value and the benefit of diversity to our young ones. This is a great time to be an American. It is a great time to be an educator. It's a great time to be an academic. Let us use these resources to help one another and strengthen one another. May God bless you, and please enjoy the rest of the panel. Good evening.
Thank you for that wonderful start,
You're welcome.
grounding us in the land. Our next speaker is Barbara Jones, who comes to us from Wayne State University. She is a lifelong Detroiter and community activist, and she's an organizer and youth violence prevention advocate. She is also community dispute resolution specialist and faculty instructor for the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at Wayne State University.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I guess I can step away from this mic. I kind of know how to project my voice, so I will talk softly so none of you will think that I'm yelling or screaming at you. My name is Barbara L. Jones. I use the L for many reasons. I love my middle name, but I also want you to know that there are two Barbara Joneses at Wayne State University. So I use the L to differentiate myself from my colleague, Barbara L. Jones. As Alisa said, first of all, I want to thank all of the conveners. I would be remiss in not being invited here to just share some conversations, some thoughts, some dialogue. I'm speaking directly from the heart. You know, I have a few scripted things that I want to put out there as far as some context, but I am looking forward to an organic discussion and dialogue that involves all of us. I'm the Community Dispute Resolution Specialist for the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, and I'm also faculty there, and I teach social justice activism. But I come to you all with my authentic heart. I would not be in the position that I am if it wasn't for me being a mother and a parent and the giver of life. I'm a youth advocate. I'm a grandmother. I operate in several roles. I'm not a pastor or a preacher or an evangelist, but I'm very spiritual. And the work that I do, I like to call it my ministry, but I don't have that title of imam or pastor. So I just want to make sure I make that clear distinction of where I come from. But again, I would not be occupying the current space that I'm in if it was not for my faith, my family, and community, and that comes from all different walks of life. So I thank you for this opportunity. I came to be in my role as being of service to others. That's how I was raised. That's how I was brought up. I am actually the first in my family to attain a college degree. And I did not attain that until I was 48 years old with an undergraduate in mass communications and a master's in dispute resolution, along with a graduate certificate in peace and international security. So I come with a lot of life experience in addition to the expensive piece of paper that I acquired from Rochester College and Wayne State University. I came to my role in all of the roles that I served in because I had a 22-year career in media. And I had a wonderful career in media. If you all kind of listen to my voice, I do a lot of voiceover work. But what I did, I was an account executive, and I sold airtime. And if anyone knows those terms, yes, I sold air, broadcast, and radio. So I sold commercial time to make other journalists and media professionals look good in all of their day parts in TV and in broadcasting. I came to do this work. I knew I was born and I was destined to do this work, but I came to do this work in my role as a mother. In 2007, me being the mother of one only daughter and one only son, I immediately switched careers because my son was constantly bullied. So I had to leave that role as a media person and really take on the full job in community, on campus, within the schools as a mama bear. And that led me to really focus not only on my very unique child, who I just recently lost 23 months ago, but it led me to really focus not only on him inside and outside the home. It gave me an opportunity to interface with other parents and other mothers and fathers and family members and what we call the time of huge conflict. And it started off with my son being bullied. And because I needed to continuously advocate for my son with his unique abilities, I advocated even harder. And I had to make these demands as a parent that my son deserved the same rights and opportunities as anyone else. Then I decided to go back and get my master's degree from Wayne State in dispute resolution so I can be more academically informed and really command the respect as just being a mama with a degree. So that's how I came to be in my role, and that just flourished into me trying to figure out how I'm going to make life work for me and my family. And I knew immediately when I got into my degree program that I'm not a good third-party neutral intervener. I discovered that quick because of the role that I've always operated in as it relates to advocacy. I can't be quiet. I come from a social justice background, and I wanted to continue the legacy of my family, to continue to advocate for not only my child, but for all young people. So again, I come to you as a mama. I want to just read some definitions here of why we're really all here this evening. So please bear with me as I read. So the definition, culture. What is culture? Culture is defined as a set of values, practices, traditions, and or beliefs a group shares, whether it's due to age, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, or social group. The external or conscious part of culture is what we can see on the outside but it's really at the tip of the iceberg, and it includes behaviors and a lot of beliefs. Culture is internal or subconscious. Part of a culture is below the surface of a society and includes some beliefs and values and thought patterns that underlie behavior. There are major differences between conscious and unconscious culture. You all got that? Okay, good. So now let's talk about the definition of diversity. What is diversity? Diversity is defined as the range of human differences. I'm going to emphasize and underscore the word human, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, social class, physical ability or attributes, religious or ethical value systems, national origin, and political beliefs. That's a lot. I'm going to give you the definition of inclusion. Inclusion is involvement, engagement, and empowerment, where the inherent worth and dignity of all people, let me repeat, all people are recognized. And I'm going to underscore and add value to us being human beings. Now I'm going to add something else in really, really quick, and this is for thought. Implicit bias. I want to introduce that. This is not a new term. This is not a new concept, but I want to introduce this term in the spirit of why we are all here today. Implicit bias exists when people unconsciously hold attitudes toward others or associate stereotypes within them. I want to let that sink in for a second, because I can add in, along with culture, diversity, inclusion, implicit bias. I want to just throw something out. Explicit bias. And then I'm going to add complicit bias. These are things, issues, and challenges that our keynote speaker pretty much summed up in what we all have to reckon with. You see, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to occupy this space. I'm not supposed to be behind this podium. I'm not supposed to be in the position that I'm in based off of the devaluation of my experiences as a Black mother, as an unrecognized academic, as a Black woman, and all of the other roles that I serve in. I appreciate Bill, Twyla's, and Alisa's deliberate call to action for this convening. Alisa and I have had several long conversations on what community is. And it's all of us. Whether we're in Hamtramck, Detroit, Northville, because that's another division of exclusion, because we are divided by our geographical areas that we live in. What I teach and what I talk about and what I intentionally do with young people, from high schoolers all the way to college students, is talk openly and honestly about all of these divisions and these conflicts that we have, because our young people are not equipped with the skills to even withstand them. We as adults and as educators, I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to call myself out. Do not teach the skills to our students because of a lot of mandates that we have to do in order to just educate our children. What a disservice that we are doing to our students because we have to achieve mandates on all different levels. So I know that we won't be able to solve all the problems that we all deal with, but what Alisa and others have done is to reimagine, because we have to reimagine, because we've already done this. We've already been through a point in history where we know how to do some grassroots organizing and activism to be able to have these conversations in a respectful way. And let's talk about the word respect in closing. Respect does not harm. Respect does not harm. And some of the things that we have historically done as it relates to grassroots activism right here in this area involve everybody. But I'm one of two Black women in this room. And I have a huge problem with that. I'm excited to have these conversations with all of you. We have to reckon with it. This is an explicit call to action. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for those beautiful words. Our next speaker is Jaleelah Ahmed, our Superintendent of Hamtramck Public Schools. Ms. Ahmed has been working in education and inclusion for many years. Before becoming superintendent, she served as ELL Director of Hamtramck Public Schools, and prior to that, she served in other geographical areas, working with a range of different populations. I'm really excited to have her come up and speak.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I would like to follow with my dear colleague Barbara and continue the dialogue about accountability, responsibility. First and foremost, thank you to Dr. Perkins, Mr. and Mrs. Myers, for offering us this platform. We need more opportunities to engage in this type of dialogue that is very much needed. I would like to begin by sharing my journey to where I am today. It's in 4 parts. Planting of the seed, soul searching, putting students first, and the road to excellence. Planting the seed. I came into this position in a previous position in Hamtramck Public Schools. Just to give you an idea of Hamtramck Public Schools, we serve about 3,500 students. We have 29 languages. The predominant languages, number 1, Arabic, with about 1,600. Bangla, following with about 1,000. Our next predominant languages, Polish, Albanian, and Bosnian. When it comes to our student population, they are high poverty students dealing with toxic stress and many, many issues that come along with that. And we have to teach standards. Planting the seed. I was the hope when I came into this position for a lot of people. And they started to say, you will be the superintendent. We want you. I laughed. Nah, it's not for me. No, it's not for me. I knew that I was going to affect and I was going to influence and I was committed to education at a national level and an international level. That was my commitment. Everyone that knew me knew that when it comes to the underrepresented communities, when it comes to social stratification, I'm going to make a difference. Any way and every opportunity that I have. Planting the seed. That continued. The more people got to know me, the more they continued. You're going to be our superintendent, not for me. Mr. Mika'il, very beloved superintendent, stated that he was going to resign last year. And again, everyone, and again, reservations. It got serious when position was posted. And I had a duty, accountability, Barbara said, responsibility. So I said, you know what? I owe it to the community. This is what they want. The teachers that I've worked with, we started with about 7 or 8 ELD teachers, we grew to 40. All of them, many of them echoed the same thing. You're the right person. You represent the community. You understand the needs. I said, you know what? I'll apply. We'll see. So it started from planting the seed. Then I had to do some soul searching. Spoke to my mom. My mom already thinks I'm overworked. No, you need to take care of yourself. Okay? My dad, go for it. This is what you want, go for it. Okay. My husband and my children said, Mom, my husband, go for it. We believe in you. I said, oh, goodness, do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? Because I knew I'm stepping into new territories. All of a sudden, it got real. I was among 6. It got real. It was heated. I heard conversations like, no, we can't have her. We can't allow her to be the superintendent. The Muslims are already taking over. They're taking over the council, city council. We cannot give them this. They, her. No one was talking to students. Soul searching. That's when it started. I started to say, why isn't there talk about the students? We'll talk. No one is talking about the 250 students at Dickinson West that are in temporary portables that have become permanent for a decade. No one was talking about that. That is an equity situation. No one was talking about the African American graduation gap at the high school. No one was talking about how our school district is one of the lowest performing school districts in the state. Soul searching. And I said, I have to do this. This is my responsibility. I must do this. Be the change that you want to see in the world. I was committed I was dedicated, and I wanted this more than ever. Because the personal agendas that were out there about me, myself, and I, nothing about our students. Nothing about our students' needs. Nothing about our parents. Nothing about our buildings and facilities. And I knew putting students first. That was my job. I'm going to be the person that's going to put our why as our number one agenda. I will remind everyone that has any other personal agenda why we're there. I became one of the finalists from 6 to 2. Boy, it got heated. I never felt loved and loathed at the same time. There were people that I felt were my friends, my colleagues, who approached me and said, you know, Jaleelah, this is very emotional. I care about you, but I'm Anglo-Saxon. You know? Say no more. Say no more. You do what's right for you. I have thick skin. I'm a Muslim woman. I'm a person of color, and I am a woman. When it comes to superintendency, we're a rare commodity. When you look at the superintendency, over 80% dominated by men. We were 6%, now we're 13%. So I said, that's okay. I will continue to do what is the right thing, despite who's on my side. And I knew at the end of the day, and it was so interesting going into this, there were people that I thought were on my side, were not. There were people that were not on my side, became on my side. During this experience, and it was a tiring experience. But at the end of the day, the only thing that drove me and gave me my oxygen was doing what is right. I never wanted anything more than to be the one that's going to make a difference, to have the real talk and put the focus where it needs to be. Road to excellence. First week as a superintendent, sat down with the facility directors, and I said, these are our issues. We're going to visit each and every building, and we're going to have a game plan. What are we going to do? After the visitations to all of the facilities, we sat for 3 hours. They got up and they said, boy, you're aggressive. Putting students first. The superintendent stated address was dedicated to what is our focus? What is our purpose? What is our why? We have to put the personal agendas behind. And I said, and I will say it, and I will continue, because one of the things that had occurred when I was one of the finalists was many people threatening the board, we're going to resign. If she is superintendent, we will resign. And I shared with many people, if you have a problem working with me, I have a problem with you working with young girls that look like me. There's the door. I'll help you by opening it. Road to excellence. I worked with the ELD team. We came together, identified students, worked diligently to support our students. I believe looking at the bottom up and empowering people, strengthening, looking at their talents, their skill set, and building on them. One of our schools with over 700 students, I would say about 500 were EL students, English learners. That school has been recognized by the state because not only did they beat the county scores when it comes to the WIDA assessment, but the state. Out of 2 schools in the state, they have been recognized to be a part of the 2019 Distinguished Schools on a national level. Road to excellence. We are committed to improving conditions and equity amongst our students. Those 250 students that are in portables, we are looking to pass a bond and build on the existing building and give them 20 classrooms that they rightfully deserve. I can continue, and the main thing that has been established is culture and climate, responsibility, accountability. We're here for the students. Every decision is made and centered around what is the right and the best decision for all of our students. I would like to conclude by restating what the Imam and Barbara reiterated. It is our duty as citizens, it is our duty to continue to echo and come together, echo the responsibility, accountability, come together as a unified force. Remind everyone of the importance of inclusion. Just by you being here, you are saying this is important, this is relevant, this deserves to have the opportunity for all of us to come together. I look forward to more opportunities like this, and again, each and every one of us has that responsibility. I hope someone plants the seed for you. I hope you get the opportunity to do some soul searching, and at the end of the day, be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you.
Jaleelah, for those very inspirational and motivational words. Our next speaker is Raihan Akther. She is principal at Bridge Academy West. Ms. Akther has advanced degrees in both education and social work, and she also has a degree in journalism. And she draws on all the different bodies of knowledge that she's collected in serving youth and families. And I'll hear from Raihan Akther.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Quick complaint. I'm at a disadvantage being fourth, and I can't quite compete with my predecessors, but I will do my best, and I'll try to keep it under 10.
Just collaborative, no competition.
So I know that Barbara and Jaleelah were talking about advocacy and inclusion. This is going to be kind of my personal narrative and what I went through as an immigrant myself. So good evening once again. As we all know, this is a forum we're focusing on education and inclusion. So inclusivity is a very essential part of everyday lives, especially for students and children within the educational setting. Growing up in New York, it was a completely different scene in the 80s than it is now, and it's a world of difference than from Michigan for sure. My first home was in Greenpoint, New York, very near the East River. The neighborhood was predominantly white, and my siblings and I were the 3 token brown children in the neighborhood. So we kind of brought up the diversity card just a little bit, you know. You can easily say that my parents did not have any issues spotting me during dismissal. I was the only brown student in the school. And I'm not trying to be offensive or racially insensitive. It's just, I just want you to understand, growing up in that neighborhood, being the only one there, it was quite a different feeling and a different situation than it is currently now. So what made it hard was the fact that my teachers had no idea where Bangladesh was, nor were they aware of it even geographically. I mean, I understand it's a tiny country, little blip on the map, but you know, they still didn't know. So, you know, me and my little self going up on the map, going, and here is the little dot right there, you know? And they're like, oh, okay, you know. I was lucky enough that in Bangladesh, they do teach English, so you learn how to read, write, and you have a very rudimentary understanding of the language. But I think as a child or even as an adult, no one is truly prepared for the transition into a new country, a new language, and completely new cultural norms. How can my teachers truly assist me and help me if there's a language barrier between us? How can they possibly help me with my language acquisition and my comprehension when they can't even communicate with me? Back then, I mean, computers, technology was not readily available in the 80s, guys. So I'm not trying to date my age, but you understand, we're coming back a couple of decades, you know? Nowadays, even as an ESL teacher, when I can't communicate with the child because he speaks a different language, I can easily go onto my phone, Google Translate, put on a YouTube video and say, you know what? But this was not the norm back then. And so there was a struggle for the teacher as well as for the student. I remember my brother, he was in 7th grade, and he was struggling with Greek mythology, particularly the story of Icarus and the sun. Greek mythology is difficult even as an adult, and especially for a foreigner who doesn't understand. You have no idea the metaphor, all the wording, what are they saying, what is the moral? I mean, you were really struggling. I remember my sister, I think she was just starting high school, and she was learning about US government. But there's no one to help us. We're new, we don't have any family, we don't know anybody. So you understand the struggle was really, really rough back then. So those are my struggling days of the past, and you can say that my language acquisition has quite improved. But you may disagree on that, but that's okay. So now I move forward. We're moving forward a few decades, and I'm moving to Detroit, Michigan, thanks to my husband back there. I never liked moving here. I'm from Queens, but I love Michigan now, Detroit. And I started working in a charter school. So guys, remember, my whole life I grew up being probably one of the few brown people in the school. I come to Hamtramck, I walk in, culture shock. Oh my God, what is this? There are people like me, the whole school. The students are like me. They don't speak English and they're struggling. Now I'm thinking, oh my God, I went back to the principal and I said, listen, Rebecca, this is not gonna work. And she says, why? And I said, listen, I know those are my people, the Yemenis, the Bengalis, the Polish, the Bosnians. I don't know how to work with them. Because I struggled my whole life. I did not see a lot of people like me. Now I'm surrounded by them. Now I'm feeling like the odd man out. It was like I went back, Twilight Zone, back to my childhood, but it was a complete different sentiment, but very similar at the same time. It was a very odd thing to experience. I couldn't even explain it to somebody. I came home and I was like, what is this? I told my husband, he thought I was just weird. And I was like, you don't understand, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I didn't see people like me. This was not a norm. So, after 20 years here, I have a few old students in here. After 20 years, I am clearly in my element, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, being in this community for so long, it totally has its advantages and disadvantages. You get to know the families real well. For myself, I love it. It's great. For my students, they have a different feeling about that. They're like, miss, and I'm like, listen, I will tell your father, grandfather, and your uncle. Keep it up. And they're like, oh, miss. So the one commonality you'll see in every school, regardless of the socioeconomic statuses of the area, is the concern that parents express towards their children's academic and often disciplinary records. This worry is like an ingrained part of parenthood. Because every parent wants the best for their children. Parents strive to give their progeny better than what they have gotten and what they want in order just to ensure success. Because as a parent, I'm always trying to do better for my children than I had for myself. Not that my parents did anything, it was lacking on their part, but I can do more. So, I have a lot of parents. I am at Bridge West. I've been there for a very long time. I have many parents that work 2-3 jobs to support their families. They barely speak the language. They struggle to communicate when they come into the building, yet they make that effort to come in and get that update because they want to be involved. And there are so many. that want to come but are unable to come because they have work obligations, they don't have transportation, or whatever it is, maybe they're ill. But I just want to emphasize, their absence does not mean that it's indifference or disinterest. It's just that at that moment, their priority is probably to pay the rent, to pay the bill, to buy food, whatever it is. But parents do not want to be involved. But mitigating factors often make it that they're not able to come. And we have to remember that. Because I know to my teachers, I'm constantly going, guys, this does not mean they don't care. It's just that they just can't come. So we make it. I invite the parents. I make my different events at very odd hours so that I can accommodate all my parents. I want them to come. I don't want to make it difficult. I know there are parents that work in a factory. If they take off one day, I think they lose 4 or 5 points from whatever it is they have a point scale. Why would I do that to somebody? I'll meet you. I'll come meet you at your house. I'm okay with that. Because that's the least I can do. I'm an immigrant. I remember my dad working many, many, many hours and not seeing him. But that doesn't mean my dad wasn't involved. It's just that his priority was to make sure we had food, we had a house, and we were safe. Okay. I have a lot of parents during my parent-teacher conferences. They come. They will bring, especially my moms. They will come, they will bring their neighbor, they will bring somebody that they met, anybody, even their little ones to translate because they want to be part of the dialogue, they want to know. In my school, I have this after-school program for moms, for parents, anybody that can come, for women. And some of these moms, I tell you, they will walk from one end of town to the other, regardless of what the weather is. It could be rain, sleet, snow, and hail. And you see them trudging along with their little ones because they want to do better. When you see the determination that they're exhibiting on a regular basis, you can't help but applaud the resilience they're facing and all the diversity they have on a daily basis. It is phenomenal, and I count myself lucky that I was able to, I didn't have to struggle, because that could have been me. That could have been anybody I know, it could have been anybody in my family. So why do these situations resonate with me? Because I remember, as an immigrant, my dad used to work 7 days, 12 to 15 hours a day. Why? Because he needed to pay rent, he needed to buy groceries, he needed to clothe the 3 of us, of everything that we needed, He was the only fluent speaker in the house. And so that was a problem. We didn't speak, we spoke very little. And props to my mom, God bless her, because she attended every single event, to whoever she could. Even I went for my brother's high school, translations and conferences. But she made it. She made it her business to be involved because she wanted to be an involved parent. She wanted to be an informed parent. Even when we were sick and my mom didn't drive. In New York, you have to understand, public transportation is crazy. She would take a cab to the other side of town to pick us up. But she made it. She was that parent. And to this day, I don't think that, I don't think I've ever thanked her enough for it. She did the best she could within her capacities. And I can never repay her or my dad for all the values they've instilled in me. They both have passed, long gone, but every day, any good deed I do, I always say, join my parents in my good deeds. Because of them, I am who I am. So the other thing that I wanted to also kind of emphasize, as I'm going to sort of conclude, as an educator, I'm proud to say that the schools we have within this community, we really, really strive to represent our community within the educational field. Our parents know that our schools are an environment, we're creating an environment that are safe and friendly for their children to grow and learn. With that in mind, I think it's imperative that it's more imperative now than ever that we need to improve and continue working hard to prepare our future generations for greatness and for success. We really have to, we have to step up our game for real. I, as an immigrant, I still consider myself an immigrant, I remember my own struggle. And so when I see I have 361 students in my school. a lot of them are EL students, and they struggle with language. And like I will, whatever it is I need to make it better, because there is hope. I feel like I'm like a living success story. Immigrants can go up, move up the ladder, and do things. You know, I know with it's what Jaleelah was saying, was that same thing when I became a principal. It was a very I was a very reluctant principal. I didn't even they told me, I said, no, not for me. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, no. This, I'm behind the scene. I'm not. Don't do this. And they were like, congratulations, you're the principal. I was like, no, like, not me. This doesn't work for me. And they were like, you know, the funny thing is, the most reluctant people are the ones that do the best job because they didn't want it in the first place. It's a scary thing. So first time I went to a principal's meeting, I walk in, there are like 12 men. I was like, wow, look at that boys club. And you want me to be part of it? Are you sure about this? You know, and I said to my director, please do understand, I did not grow up here. I grew up my whole life in New York. I don't want to say a militant attitude, but I am going to say what's on my mind. And I'm going to always advocate for my students. They're my children, and I am liable for them. And I'm going to be responsible for them, even when they're 20 and 30 years old. I'm very proud of them, and I'm very proud to represent them at all times. So if you really do not want to hear everything that I have to say, maybe you should put me in this place, you know? And he's like, what are you talking about? It's fine, you know? And I was like, oh my God, what is this, you know? So I still have to fight often, but that's okay. I fight with pride now. And I always tell them, I said, you know what, I had to fight to get up here, and I'm going to continue staying up here. So as I conclude finally, I just wanted to let you guys know that as we step up our game, we need to do better for our children. We need to do better for everybody, immigrants, non-immigrants, children, collectively. They're ours, and the future generation really depends on us. If we don't make our move and be really proactive, we don't have a very bright future coming our way, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get moving, and let's really start some of these grassroots movements, and let's get together and let's get going. Have a good night.
Thank you, Raihan, for the vivid stories about your parents and about your own life that really made an impression on us. Our next speaker is Adeeb Mozip. And Adeeb is going to bring us to a different context. So far, we've mainly been talking about secondary and elementary education, and we're going to post-secondary, right? We're going to university setting. So Adeeb, he comes to us from Wayne State University and from Dearborn. So at Wayne State University, he is a doctoral candidate, and he's carrying out innovative and original research on education and inclusion in colleges and universities, which he'll talk about today. It seems as though when minority students make it to Wayne State or to a university, that maybe they've met with success, but along the way, minority students, it's not a complete story, so we'll talk about that. That's the beginning of another struggle. He's also, among other hats that he wears, the National Board Vice President for AAYSP, the American Association of Yemeni Students and Professionals, a vibrant and essential group that bolsters education, professionalization, and inclusion for Yemeni Americans at different stages of learning and career. So I'll turn it over to Adeeb Mozip.
Good evening, and first I would like to thank OneHamtramck Bill, Dr. Perkins, and my fellow panelists and everyone for being here. So I want to take you a little bit of a personal journey, and then I'll conclude with an overview of my study and what I'm doing. So I immigrated here to the United States in 2000. And I started attending Fortson High School in Dearborn. I spent 2 years there, learned a little bit English, and moved to community college, Uniforth College, and then to the University of Michigan, and that's where I obtained my degree in accounting, a bachelor in accounting. And then I started working as a professional at the University of Michigan, vice president of research office, doing an internship, then a full-time job. Then moved to Wayne State University for an accounting position. And it's been at Wayne State about 12 years in different roles within the university, focusing on finance and operation, and right now, as mentioned, Director for Business Affairs at the law school, overseeing all the finance, HR, IT, and other business operations. While there at Wayne State, I completed my master's degree in business administration at the School of Business. And when I came to Yemen, I came with about 4 or 5 friends from the same village, from the same high school. And we ended up in different high schools in southeastern Michigan. And leaving high school, I get to know more other friends from different countries who came to be, at the age of high school, because when you come to this, especially in Year 1, they put all of us in one track, Yazan students, and when I started, after I graduated and went to Henry Ford, only a few of us ended up going to college. And when I was at UFM, there was a whole business school, so only 2 Yemeni Americans. And as about the time I was graduating, we started thinking, what happened to the other students? Why it's just me here at the end? And then a small group of students from UFM, Henry Ford, and other, started to think about what are the issues. And one of them is my friend who's known here in the Hamtramck area and sits now on the Board of Education, is Murtada Bey. He was one of the founders of the AOSB chapter in Michigan. And that's when we started the chapter here. There was another chapters in Chicago and DC, and we started one here in Michigan. And the organization is just focusing on promoting higher education. So we started talking to principals, to parents, to among ourselves, what are the issues that are preventing us as Yemeni Americans, and later on to get to know it's not just our issue, it's an issue of all and most minorities within the US. So, and to put this in our experience in context of what happened, and we have to understand the situation in the environment. One is not a lot of students go to college, and college wasn't the exception instead of the norm. And there were few who attempted to complete college and failed. And those people become a bad example for the rest of the community. Because my friends who I came with, they didn't come to college, but they ended up going to work in a gas station, in a restaurant, in a factory, started making less good money, got married, started a family, building back, it used to be something known here in the community, building something back in Yemen, building a nice house and going to visit once in a while. It was something cool to do. And those people that went to college, and a lot of them either disappeared or even if they're successful, they disappear. Or they did not able to complete college and become a bad example. Third is, especially for women, is strike money even for men, is the idea of being able to continue college and but preserving your identity and your religion and traditional. It was either or, and you can't do both at the same time. And it was a struggle. So facing those challenging pursuing higher education, it's still up to now, so these are persistent challenges to a less extent for other communities. We started the organization for AOSB, and we led many initiatives in the community promoting higher education. We did college tours, taking students to college, and parents did a lot of town hall meetings, and we still do a lot of now more focused program of mentoring. We have a program in one of the high schools in Dearborn where we bring about 30 professionals each month to the school to do mentoring one-on-one with the students. We do on a monthly basis college tours to Wayne State and UFM, Ann Arbor, and other universities. We also do a lot of parent outreach and a lot of sit-downs with school administrators, especially in Dearborn, and talk about issues of equity and talk about issues of inclusion. An easy example, I'll give you a quick example, which is we did when we're talking about parent-teacher conferences. So at Stewart, and I know Ms. Ahmed knows that so very well because she spent some years there. It's almost a very diverse school in Dearborn, but it's outside a lot of our students get bused there, so it's not their community school. And that creates a lot of division in terms of ability of a parent to go to their school and be part of the school after school activities because they can't walk there and it's quite distant. And one time we asked why parents are not showing up to parent-teacher conference. You know, the same traditional stuff, they don't care. And I said, okay, for next one, give us 2 weeks for the next one. And give us the list and phone calls of the parents. And me and 5 other people in the basement of a mosque, we called every parent. And we left them a personalized message about the importance of being in this parent-teacher conference. The line was at that day to outside. They couldn't keep up. They had to extend the hours and ask the teacher to stay. I said, if you reach out and talk to them, they will show up. But now, what led, my personal study led now to my doctoral study, which is more focusing on studying the environment. Because when I started the doctorate study, I started reading a lot of research and literature about diversity, inclusion, but also student success and what does it mean to be a successful student in college. And what I found is that the struggle of me and people like me in college, it's not just because of who we are. It's not because our parents are reluctant to send us and let us go. It's not because we're poor or because we're a different race. It's a shared struggle. It's an institution struggle. Institutions of higher education are struggling to accommodate and accept the students. And on average, for everyone, for every race and background, only 50% of people who start college finish and get a degree. That's a crisis. That's something wrong with the institutions. And there are a lot of factors. I mean, you hear now the political debate about free college, and cost is one of them. Costs get increased every year. Around June, you would hear institutions announcing their tuition hikes, and it's like 3, 4, 5% each year. There were years where Wayne State and other institutions increased by like 10% their costs, and the cost is one issue, but also climate and and how the institutions are shaped. Universities, there is theories on why students succeed and how you accommodate students and integrate them. And one of them was the can-do integration model of 1997, and it was expanded to 1975 in the 80s. And that is very dominant in the literature. Anything that you read about how college students integrate into college and experience college, you come across tend to. And his model was, there's 3 steps that students goes through. One is separation, second is transition, then incorporation. And separation meaning as students move to a college, they have to separate everything else they had to bring with them. So they separate from their community, from their religion, from their affiliations, and that's a success. That in order to be successful, you have to go through this process, and then transitioning to familiarizing the students with things in college, and transitioning into what college means. How can I be accustomed to things in college, and then incorporating being engaged and taking pride in their university, UFM alum, Go Blue, these things, these kind of things that get students then incorporated. Well, if that's the system, because it's in the literature, and also it's how universities take that into consideration when they develop academic supports. When we, unique people, go through these systems, we resist that. We want to be, we want to take our tradition. We want to be our own. We want to connect with the family. We want to stay connected. We want, we bring a lot of things that are against what the system was built for. I can give you an easy example, which is like in college, you're expected to compete hard with other students. While minority students, especially Arab American, African American, Latinos, they come with a community-based thinking. That I need to help my friend. This is my neighbor. This is my friend that I grow up with. I can't compete with them. But that's how tests are built into, how the structure is built to compete. And it's nothing wrong with road to excellence. It's just how you get there. You don't have to compete and put down other people to be on the top. You can all go to the top. So my study right now is, as I said, is unique because because of the lack of literature. There are less than 10 studies on Middle Eastern Americans in college. There's a lot of studies on health, and I tend to believe that health on Arab Americans, and I tend to believe because there's a lot of Middle Eastern doctors in the community, and they tend to study their own. When you get to do a doctor's study, you do it for you. When I finished my bachelor degree, I did it for my mom because she kept me going throughout. I did my master for my work, so I get promoted and get a better job. But this is for me now, and the purpose of this study is to explore how Middle Eastern American experience campus climate, how they experience a sense of belonging or exclusion in college, and how they perceive discrimination climate in college, and then how their identity as Middle Eastern American shape these experiences. And I'm doing a mixed method, quantitative and qualitative study. And the hope is this study is to provide colleges and universities and administrators information of how our students experience their college and how they perceive their climate. And so they can support those students when they arrive to their campuses. And also to give them an ability to assess their climate and from a unique perspective. We bring a unique perspective to this, to studying climate and inclusion. That's different because as one of the scholars put it, Middle Eastern Americans are in an unusual paradox. We're minoritized because of our identity, because of how popular culture paint us in movies, in the media, and the her, the them, always. And it goes back, even before 9/11, it goes back to what Edward Said called Orientalism, how always Middle Easterns have been treated as the others, as the outsiders. And now it's that has driven in terms of how how we're perceived in this unique paradox, because we're not identified as a minority, although we're minoritized throughout our experiences, because we're coded as white on legal documents. So when I go right now to study Middle Eastern students, I can't pull their name. I can't get a list from a university that tell me, here's the students who are Middle Eastern, here's how they're doing, and because they're white on the system. And there are some changes. I found the national survey that have students identify themselves as Middle Easterns. I'm going right now, I guess today, met with 3 groups of students, presidents of groups, the Lebanese American groups at Wayne State, the Yemeni American Cyclodanians, and the Iraqi Union. And they're planning a culture day, and I implanted myself in that so I can have them send my study to their list and get more participants. And it's part of that struggle to get to know these students and share with them my study, and hopefully it will be completed the next year. So to conclude, the struggle continue. I mean, I hear and I deal a lot in my district with issues of inclusivity, and you hear the news, you see the incidents that happen, and there's a lot of people that react when they see students. We have this issue right now that's going on with the students in Stewart middle school that was covered by the news, and people start protesting, which is good, people getting engaged, but the issue is things then go back to normal. In a few days, few months, people forget. And the work of really engaging to change policies, to change institutions, take a long time and efforts. And I echo the rest of the panelists. We're here for the long run of working together to change those, to make these institutions in school open, inclusive, and feel that that's theirs. And it takes a lot of work and effort and community-based initiative to make those happen. So thank you, and looking forward for more conversation.
Thank you, Adeeb. And I think we're all going to be looking forward to learning more about how your study's going and seeing the results, and also following AYSP's activities too. Our last speaker, Emad Shammakh, is the president of the Yemeni American Leadership Association, which is headquartered right here at Hamtramck. And among its many other activities, it offers ESL classes to people in the community, particularly adult women. And so again, we're going to shift into another realm here, which is, we're looking now at the parents' education as much as the students. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about this organization from what Mr. Shammakh tells us today.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know if you guys left me the best for last or since I'm the youngest, but I thank you very much for having me here. I would like to thank OneHamtramck for sponsoring this great event, and for Alisa for hosting this great, healthy event that we're learning so much from. As you guys heard, my name is Emad Shammakh. I immigrated to the United States in the year 1998. I came when I was 5 years old. I came straight to the city of Hamtramck. It was still very populated with Polish immigrants, so not a lot of Yemeni Americans lived in the city. So I was still an outsider. I was still someone new, someone that people are staring at, trying to identify who is this person, where did this person come from. I still remember when I was in 4th grade, and our holiday Eid came, and the teacher and the principal was like, "What is that? Do you guys need a day off?" And we're like, like, yeah, we do. We need to stay home. It's a holiday, just like Christmas. So they didn't close the school. It wasn't as popular, or it wasn't as important for the school system. But some of the students did stay home and etc. So as I grew up in this city, more and more immigrants came in, and we're making America great again, or continuing to make America great again. As more immigrants populated in the city of Hamtramck, more and more people started writing books about us, talking about us, writing about us on newspapers. Enrollment rates in schools went up, so we were now becoming the majority, as we are now. It's good that we have reached the stage of being a majority, because now people are able to study about us, learn about us, understand who we are, identify the true, or what we really are, instead of how Mr. Mozip said, how the media or the movies put us into the public. So it's great now to walk the streets knowing that people know who I am, where I come from, and can identify the country I come from on the map. And it's good that, as Barbara mentioned earlier, that we're trying to fight for our history not to be erased, and so that we continue giving people the chance to learn about others, religions, ethnicities, and cultures, and etc. So to go back about me, I came when I was 5 with my mother, my father, a sister, and a brother. My sister's the oldest. And what's amazing is I stand here in front of you guys as a young man, as an adult now, and I see some of my teachers out in front of me, and it makes me, I just want to say good job. Look what you guys have. You guys were leaders, are leaders, continuing to be leaders, and this is what your equation made. I'm here continuing your job and your mission. So thank you, and if it wasn't for you guys, I won't be here. So about my mother and my father, my mother didn't have a chance to go to school. She was a housewife, got married at a young age, still lived in the village. So she didn't have a lot of advantages, a lot of opportunities. However, did she learn about life? Yes. She knows more than me, or no matter how far I go with my education, I can never exceed the education of life that she reached. My father was able to complete middle school, and then after that he immigrated into the United States to become the supporter of his children, his father, and more of his relatives back home. So as we immigrated into the United States, my mother continued being a housewife. She made sure that my father and her children had a nice hot meal ready, our clothes are clean, the house is ready for guests at any time. So, and I always say that mothers have the #1 hardest job in the world. There is no job out there that that a person has to work for 24 hours throughout the day, except a mother. My mother worked so hard to raise a young, educated man, where now I could call myself the president of a local organization supporting immigrants. My father, as some of my panelists said, worked 12 to 15 hours a day. Does he still continue that now? Yes, because he has young men that are in college, and as you guys heard Mr. Mozip say, there's a rise in tuition rate. So even though we are working, my father is still working to support us until we reach that stage where he could retire, and it's our duty and our chance to support him. Today is all about education. It's all about students. You guys did a great job with me. Is there a lot of room still left for improvement? Yes. In our city, we still need a lot of improvement. We need to collaborate with different organizations, different school systems. We need to hear why other school districts are doing better than us. What are we missing? And the good thing about us is that we're so different than many other communities, many other districts. We're so diverse, we're colorful. We're just like the rainbow. Everybody wants to see the rainbow after the rain. Hamtramck is that rainbow. Everybody wants to come and study about us, write books about us, talk about us. But at the same time, we need to give these people good stories, positive stories to write about. We need more educated people to grow out this city, to rise. And there's many that have started. But do we stop? No, we continue, we improve. So as a young adult, because all the adults here, all the panelists that came up, they're either principals, superintendents, employees at universities. I'm the youngest panelist, and my job in the community is to educate the adults. Big flip right there. So, but is there a duty and responsibilities to educate adults? Yes, there is. Especially in a very diverse city as Hamtramck, full of immigrants that are just like my parents. They didn't go to school, didn't have the opportunity. So I am the president of the Yemeni American Leadership Association called Yaleelah. It's headquartered on the corner of Holbrook and St. Alban. The Yemeni American Leadership Association exists for the past 5 years. It has many different departments. It has the Department of Education, Department of Health, Department of Culture. So I'll start with culture. The Department of Culture has a duty and responsibility of collaborating with the community, gathering as many people as possible to identify culture differences. Why are we different? And to learn about other people's religions. Why is there noises 5 times a day that come up that are called the Adhan? What are they saying? Why do a majority of Muslim women in the city cover their scarves? Why do men wear long robes instead of a suit or jeans? Why and why and why? So it's our duty to identify these differences and to educate people so they feel safer, to feel empowered, to know why things exist the way that they do exist. Then we have the Department of Health. Department of Health is in charge of assisting families, assisting individuals that struggle with healthcare access, with applying for healthcare benefits, anything to do with health. There's people that don't even know how to find a doctor, or don't even know how to make an appointment to a hospital to do an MRI. Why? Because they're not educated. And then finally, the Department of Education. It's my favorite because I hold the folder or the responsibility of the education. Currently, we have over 200 students, 200 female students, and I know all the females are gonna love this now. Ever since January of this year, I see that I'm standing toward fighting for the rights of women, empowering women. Why? Because I did a study on the ratio of male to female in the Arab American community, and there's a big difference. It came up to for one male, there is 5 females. So there's a large number of females in our community. And a majority of them, if they fill out any application, what is your occupation? Housewife. Is it dad? I'm not here to judge. As I told you, my mom was a housewife. #1 hardest job out there. So I respect all mothers that are housewives because I know what they go through. They have more responsibilities than anyone out there. So, after I did my research, I opened the doors for all females to have a chance to go to school. And I made sure that the chance for them to go to school is at the times where their kids are at school. And if they have kids that don't go to school, I provided daycare. Why am I doing this? Why am I trying to empower women in our community? And again, the target is not to target only Yemeni American women. Anybody, any female that wishes to gain access to education, the doors are wide open. No discriminations at all. 0 tolerance. So, what I see is the problems that we have at schools with immigrants from K to 12 is that school ends at 3 and then they go home and their parents are immigrants and they didn't go to school. Now that student knew what he was doing or she knew what she was doing at school because she had a teacher teaching them and friends helping them. But when they get home and they have to do their homework and write a 5-page essay, who's there to help them? Nobody helped me. I struggled. And that's another reason why I'm fighting to empower and to educate women and men. We are partners with the International Institute, located in Detroit. Many of you guys know or heard of them. Great organization. So the men would go and attend classes there, but I made specifically this headquarters for females only. Teachers are females. It's all a female environment. It's not, again, all females from all different cultures, ethnicities, religions, they want that type of environment. It's not only us. It's not only Muslim women. So I'm trying, and we have 4 levels. We have from level 1 to level 4. Level 4 is the most advanced. The good news that I have today is the 14th student from January until today I have enrolled at a community college. These 14 women are going to go to college now. In 2 years, receive their associates. In 4, receive their bachelor's. In 2 extra years, receive their master's. They could be the next principal, the next superintendent. They will be here speaking on this panel within the next couple of years. That is empowering. It gives opportunities for their kids to look up to them. Say, my parents are achieving goals at an older age. That doesn't give me an excuse. Again, and also I'm merging with the Hamtramck Public Schools to measure the rates of improvement with students that their students attend our programs. Is the students' grades improving ever since the mother now is learning English or the father? And if that succeeds, we're going down the right path. And my mission is looking 5 or 10 years down the road, is to have the biggest ESL program in the United States for immigrants. Because empowering immigrants will empower our students. And it will, if both of them move towards success together, we will all reach our goals. And thank you very much.